Once again, this is Nuance, and we'll be speaking about breakdancing in the Olympics. Should it be an Olympic sport, or is it considered a sport at all? What do you think? Of course, I'm Mike Scala, joined, as always, by Jay Carter, also known as Timmy, the hip hop artist, the chair of BLM Tokyo, and the TikTok viral sensation. All right, what's going on, Jay?
Right, yo, that you never know what's gonna pop off. And I'm glad that the video that did seem kind of go viral, like 180,000 views, was more of a positive one. I was congratulating the first gold medal winner for breakdancing in Olympics, Ami Yuasa from Japan. So I'm glad it went viral for something like that instead of something like goofy.
Right, or something negative, something hateful, right?
Right,
Because you do
right,
see in today's world, especially on social media, the negative gets more attention, and so we're as a species incentivized to put out more negative energy, right? Because that's how
yeah.
we get attention. And unfortunately, that's how we brand ourselves even in today's world. But it's really nice when something positive can catch that attention. And I think it shows that there still is an appetite for that.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, I'm pleasantly surprised about that. You get stuck in that on TikTok, you get stuck in that 350 view range for a lot of videos because of the way the TikTok algorithm works. And so I've had some that have gone, I think the most viewed I've had was an 80K video at one point. But in the meantime, you get a lot of those 300, 350s, and so I didn't expect this to do much more. And then yeah, just kept going and kept going. I was like, wow, okay.
That is great. I'm waiting for my first breakout moment on TikTok. Of course, I'm newer to the platform. I'll say that my videos have mostly approached 1,000 view mark, maybe
Mhm.
some 600, 700, 800 in that range, which I'm happy about as someone who's just starting out. Although, like I said, I'm waiting to get that one that takes off like yours, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, it I don't know, it seems like I used to get more consistently views in the 1,000, 2,000 range, but then it dropped. So, of course, when these platforms change their algorithms and their metrics for what's a successful video, people's views tend to go up and down. So, you could see people on TikTok that have six-figure followers, and they're still only getting three, 400 or
Yeah. It's
views.
crazy to me. I just experienced that last night looking at some people's profiles. I'm like, wow, it almost doesn't seem to matter how many followers you have in terms of the views you're going to get. Now, I think, and I could be wrong on this, but from what I've been studying about the algorithm, I think that if I get more followers who are hip hop fans or who like the kind of content that I'm putting out, that maybe that's going to help me when I'm putting out more content as far as TikTok will then hopefully show it to more people who have the same interest as those followers.
Right. Yeah. So they get a sense of who you are and the content you produce, and then they'll show it to people who are likely to be interested in it.
Right.
And that
So these
potential
followers are kind
for,
of like a focus group almost.
right. And that's kind of how the TikTok algorithm works. And it shows it to like a small contingent of people
Yeah.
first, and then like, okay, it gauges like how many people or what the reaction is in that contingent. And if it's overtly positive, then they're like, okay, well, we're going to show this to a little bit of a bigger contingent and
Right.
see how it does there. And then that's why even smaller creators have the potential to go viral,
Yep.
even if they have no followers. And that's why TikTok was able to catapult itself to the forefront of social media platforms because it was possible for people to go more viral
It's like a
quickly.
meritocracy almost.
Kind of in that regard.
Yeah. And I just learned about this. By the way, I was hesitant to even get on TikTok because initially I looked at it as just another social media platform. I was like, oh, you got to build something else up from the ground. I already spent years getting to 5,000 Facebook friends, and you got the Instagram and Twitter. It's like, do I really need to start from scratch with something new all over again? You're just spreading
Yeah.
yourself out so thin. Is it really worth the energy? But when I
Yeah.
started looking into it, like you said, you don't really need to spend months or years building up your followers to have success on there. There are people who have a ton of followers whose videos don't get a lot of views, and vice versa. There are people who post their first video on TikTok that go viral, right? You can have 1 million views on your first video with no followers. And so
Right.
you do have a lot of potential there. And that is exciting me, actually. For the first time in a long time, I'm excited about the music business and the abilities that you do have today to market yourself. These
Mm.
opportunities, I don't think were really there like they are now, even a few years ago, right? I remember coming out of the MySpace days, everything went to Facebook. And Facebook initially was very anti MySpace in that,
Yeah.
like,
It's like,
you're not doing that stuff, get that music off of here. They would send a message to anyone. If you send them a friend request, they would get a message, only accept this person if you know them personally. Remember that one? And then
yeah.
people message you, excuse me, do I know you? And so it really wasn't a good platform to build your brand. It was just to talk to people you already knew in your real life. And so there was kind of what I would call a dry period or a drought in terms of how is the artist, how is the musician supposed to market themselves in that world, right? MySpace was great for getting your stuff out there. Facebook, at least initially, was terrible at that, right? And then that was around the time when people stopped buying music also. And when it went to streaming at first, there was this idea of, you're making so little per stream. You still are per stream, but the
You
idea
are.
at the time was it's basically impossible to make any money off of your music because, unless you're a major label artist, maybe with millions of dollars being pumped into the budget, then maybe you can generate millions of streams and make some money. But if you're doing this independently, where are you possibly going to be able to promote your music to the point where you can generate enough streams to make money? It just seemed like such a dead end at that point, and I was so discouraged from being in the music business. Right? I think over the past few years, with innovations like TikTok, you're starting to see more opportunity again. I mean, I know of independent artists who are doing millions of streams based off posting consistent TikTok content, for example,
Yeah.
or Instagram Reels, or YouTube Shorts now. So all of a sudden, it seems like the world is adjusting to the new music model, and it is becoming more possible to make money off your music. Still not the same as what it was. I mean, back in the day, you could sell 10,000 CDs out your trunk, make 100 grand. Okay, that world is gone. But I think
Yeah,
we're starting to
yeah.
see more opportunities open up, and that's exciting.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And one thing that people I think might not get is like it's not just posting little funny videos. It's a lot of work
Yeah,
to put together the videos and the content and the idea or whatever it is you want to put on there, but then to also, stay on a consistent schedule and curate that channel or that persona. So I've said it many times. People might laugh at some of these kids, these influencers or whatnot that have all these followers and the content they pull up, but they're putting in work. It's not a game. They're putting in work, and it may seem effortless
right.
because they just keep pumping it out. And I think a lot of it has to do with like it's in their mindset. So to them, it's not. Um, it's less of a chore. Like they enjoy that part of it, but it is work. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah, absolutely. But I just think about, first of all, seeing the growth that I've seen already before I even released the first song, right? Just starting to post videos on TikTok and starting to build a community. I'm noticing people who are liking my videos starting to follow me, and now they're liking all my stuff and like they're paying attention to me. I'm just seeing the metrics of, okay, I posted this video, it performed well, this one did better than that one. How can I replicate this, or how can I expand on this? And you kind of see your brand grow through these channels, right, in a way that you weren't able to before. So that's exciting me already. And I'm also thinking about the access that we have now that we didn't before. Do you remember, for example, back in the day, we did show after show after show, live shows, right, all throughout the city and all throughout the country, even,
right.
and and that's a great experience. But
Love
if you
it.
think about it, it's so much of a grind, so much work goes into that to set a live event up like that to hopefully get 100 people in a club somewhere, right? That would be a
Right.
great show.
Right.
Whereas on TikTok, for example, you can record something at your house, or you can go down the street to some studio, whatever. You can record it anywhere and upload it. And now hundreds and thousands of people are seeing your live performance,
Right.
right? It's so much easier to reach people than it ever was.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I remember you mentioned that, doing setting up shows or even just doing performance and stuff. I remember walking the streets when we set up, what was it, the show we did with Pac FM?
Yes, in Long
And
Island.
yeah, in Long Island, and it was, of course, it was just you and I putting this stuff out there, and walking the streets with flyers trying
Right,
to.
right. Going to Kinko's, right? Getting the flyers printed out,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Yeah, a different world. And, again, some people might be nostalgic for that world, but there are so many more benefits. I mean, it's different. I'm not going to say this is better now, but there are so
yeah.
many things about it that are better now, which are exciting.
Right. And I see it as more other options. You can still hit the streets with flyers,
Right.
right? And there's benefit to that too, because you get that face-to-face personal connection. Be like, yo, this is my show. Come on out, yo. And then so there's that dynamic because they just met you. And so maybe, they're gonna come out to see the person they just met. That's cool. But we're also with things like TikTok, like you said, you can get more people that are able to see it. And then with digital advertising, you can target it. Let's say, for example, you have your tour schedule, or you're going to do a show in, you know, Butte, Montana. Well, then you can advertise to specifically only hip hop heads in Butte, Montana
Right.
that you're going to be there. So you can be
That's
very
what's,
targeted.
yes, that's what's so exciting about this to me because it really is a matter of finding your audience, right? If you're
Right.
doing something and hopefully you're good at what you're doing, chances are there's going to be an audience out there that will want to consume that content, right? That's going to like
Right.
that music or whatever it is that you're doing. But it's
Right.
about finding them. I think it's easier
Right.
now. You have more tools now to
More
be able to
tools.
find them than you did
Yeah.
back then, right? Because back then, you're doing a show. How are you going to find the hip hop hits? I mean, there are things you could try to do. You could try to go on hip hop message boards or stand outside, maybe other hip hop shows and give out flyers. I mean, things you could try to
Right.
do. It's just so easier and more convenient now to find your audience. And there are millions, billions of people out there in the world, right?
Right.
So you should be able to. I mean, like I said, you're doing something that's good. That I think
The
for
potential
most
is
things that we do, yeah, there's potential to find that audience and to be successful. It's just a matter of finding the people.
right. Right. Yeah. So. Yeah, more tools out there available for people to try to do things. And then of course, like, there's no guarantees that anything's gonna work, but there's it can help tip the balance in your favor to some degree, or just
Right.
give you more outlets and possibilities.
But the thing is, this also that isn't a black or white question. That's not a binary thing, right? Because I get that a lot from people. They're like, oh, hopefully, you're putting out music. Hopefully, people will hear it, or hopefully it'll work. Hopefully, it won't flop, or hopefully it'll be a success. Like, yeah, but some people are looking at it in terms of all or nothing, where
Right.
it isn't like you just put something out and hope that a million people hear it the next day. Like, that's not how the world works, right? You have to build up that audience so you can see
Right.
grind. You can see your hard work paying off. It may not be happening as fast as you want or whatever, but you can see, okay, if I keep doing this, I'm going to keep growing. Now, if I want to scale it, maybe I have to change up what I'm doing or make some adjustments or whatever. But you have that data, right? So it's not like you're taking
Right.
a shot in the dark.
Yeah. That's what a lot of people, rely on, that grow multiple channels or multiple accounts. They use the data and see what's what's uh what's causing the people to engage with it, right? What's resonating with the audience? You can kind of look at the data and see what those pieces are, and then replicate that. Do something similar to that. Stay in that same vein for a while until you build more audience. And then if you want to branch out and try something that's adjacent to it, you can test a little bit, but stay on your core.
Yeah.
So it's kind of the same stuff that I advise people when I do like consulting with that. Like I had a someone that I was talking to who he had something go viral. He had a couple of videos go viral. He ended up getting 1 million views, and he only had like 200 followers.
Wow.
And that was, what I was telling him was like, listen, you've got something that works right now. Replicate that. Keep going. And he was able to grow that account to 10,000 followers. I mean, after that, just stopped posting. But like at 10,000 followers, now you've got something that you can potentially get sponsorships. You can do affiliates
Mhm.
things. You can do, what have you.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. And
so
it's about building your brand and then leveraging that in
Right.
business or wherever you want to in the world, right?
Right.
Not everyone has a desire to do that, or be that some
Right.
people
Sure.
want to work a regular job and not have to market themselves outside of how they
Right.
need to get that job. But there are many people who are trying to build something,
Right.
and that's just how I look at it. I look at it as developing a brand, right? I had a conversation with somebody a while ago when I was talking about working on my new music, and I was, I guess, saying I was taking it seriously, always going to record and work every night, and it was like a big part of my life. And they were a little taken aback, I guess, or surprised. And they said, "Well, it sounds like you're planning on making music a career." And they said for them, it was more of a hobby. And I said, "Well, I'm not even looking at it in terms of music is going to be my career or my only career. I'm looking at it in terms of I'm taking it seriously, but it's part of my brand. I'm
Right.
still an attorney, for example, and it might sound silly, but if I put out some good music that even gets local attention, oh, remember when Mike uh, was running for office and they tried making an issue of his rapping? Well, he's got a new hip hop project out, and that becomes something people talk about and maybe check out. That increases my brand value locally, and that could even help me, as funny as it sounds, in my law career, right? Because I'm on top of people's heads more, right? They're thinking of me more. I'm in people's conversations. It's like, yeah, Mike is a lawyer. That's right. I do need a lawyer. Or if you're running for office, right? You're more dynamic. You're more interesting now. You have more to you, right? It's just,
Right.
I don't look at it in terms of like the music is its own thing, the law is its own thing, and the political involvement is its own thing. I look at it like they're all components of who I am, and they're
Right.
all collectively increasing my brand value.
Right. And that's, you know what I mean? Hmm, that's kind of that struggle sometimes, right? Because like for example, I look at, again, do music, I do photography, I do teaching, right? Graphic design and social media types of stuff, digital marketing, all. But I look at that as all connected to the paradigm of communication. It's all communication, right? That the artful expression is how you're communicating. Photography, you're communicating the moments and the feelings and the imagery, right? Same with teaching, it's a communication type thing. But people will look at it and be like, well, these are all different separate things, and so maybe you're a little scattered here,
Right.
right? But like, no, there's a connection with it. It's all a part of who I am and what I do. I
Yeah.
realize that majority of what I do is is communication based,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. KRS-One had a line. He said that the way to truly stand out in the marketplace is to find the continuity in opposites, because
Right.
you're
Nice.
doing things that to other people look like don't go together. And they're like, well, how
Right.
could you do that, right? How could you do this one thing and this other thing? They just don't mesh. And you say, no, to you, they don't mesh, but I'm going to show you how they do go together. And now,
Right.
if you're able to do that, you're doing something no one else is doing, and you've cornered that marketplace.
Right. Yeah. That's a dope way of looking at it. I'll have to a dope quote about it. I'll
Yeah.
have to see that.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it and because some people don't conceive of it that way. Just like I said, like a rapper and an MC and a lawyer, oh, that doesn't make sense. But yeah, if that's expression of who you are, I mean, again, there's communication there. You're communicating messages through there. It's also the way that you deal with information and communication when you're as an attorney and even as a politician. It's about
Yeah.
communication and communicating with the people and talking to different things,
Moving the crowd,
moving
right?
the
If I
crowd.
give a speech, that's a great example. If I give a speech politically, I'm trying to move the crowd, maybe in a different way, but
Yeah.
I'm on stage with the mic as an MC. I'm also trying to move the crowd, right?
Right.
It's the same deal, just with a different medium.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I have that conversation with people sometimes because they're like, oh wow, you're into a bunch of different things. Like, well, there's also a common thread through all of it. I may be doing a guest lecture at a university, but I'm still communicating. I'm still, like you said, move the crowd. I'm still trying to talk and communicate with people, and that's what this is about.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And when you do things that aren't often done, You're going
Right.
to challenge people's preconceived notions. It's going to make some people uncomfortable. It's going to
Right.
intimidate some people, but it's
Right.
supposed to, right? Because otherwise, you wouldn't be pushed in the envelope, right? You wouldn't really be challenging anyone. You just be doing what everyone else is doing. So that's not challenging. That's not gonna, that's not gonna upset them or make them uncomfortable. So there is an element of that. It's necessary. I think you're doing something different. Yeah, some people will be like, "Yo, you can't do that," right? Maybe there are people who wish they could do something like that, right? Or maybe there are a lot of people in there, like maybe not those same exact things necessarily, but maybe
Right.
they, always had maybe, a dream of doing a certain thing, and that got put on the back burner for something else because society pushed them towards a different path, and maybe they always held on to a certain bitterness about it, and so they want to believe that they chose the right path, and what they wanted to do maybe wasn't realistic, or whatever they tell themselves make themselves feel better about their choice. So when they see
Right.
someone else going along and doing something that maybe they're a little bit jealous of, right? Like, hey, you can't do that, because that's what I wanted to do, and society told me no, so I'm going to tell you no.
Right. And to on the flip side of that, the danger of doing that is being spread too thin.
Right. They say
Um,
jack of all trades, master of none.
right. And you get people, people who focus on one thing can become a subject matter expert in that one thing. And that can be they can be highly sought after for that.
Right.
If you spread across a bunch of things and you could be good at all of these different things, people may not be able to pinpoint you on one thing and be like, oh, well, this is an expert in this field. Let's go for this person.
Or you might not have the reps in, right? If you're
Right, right,
time doing two or three different things, while the person's just doing that one thing, is putting more hours in probably on that one thing than you are at any one of your things.
right. Yeah. So, it's
It also depends on your work ethic and just the way that you do it. Like I don't have any kids, so I maybe have some more time on my hands, and people who have to take care of a family or whatever they got going on. You know,
right, right. So, yeah, I think in many ways I would classify uh you and me as Renaissance men.
right?
That
Yeah, no one told Donatello or Leonardo they couldn't paint and sing, whatever they were doing.
right, right, right. Because we do have a variety of interests and skills in many areas. Um, and I think, I mean, we called upon all of those in that first campaign, like because we had no other help, and it's like, okay, well, we can do all of these things, so we're gonna have to
It's
make.
funny though. I was just thinking about this too. The lessons I learned from being involved in politics are helpful even now when I'm thinking about promoting my music again. I'm drawing from that experience and that wisdom. When I made this music, I wasn't really thinking about the promotion aspect. I'm like, let me just focus on making the art I want to make, and then we'll worry about trying to market it. And so now I'm stepping into this marketing space. I'm getting excited about it, like we mentioned, all these opportunities. And I'm thinking, yeah, like a lot of this is just about scale, right? Like when you're in politics, you're in a campaign, you knock on a ton of doors. You knock
Right,
on doors and you call people knowing that most people aren't even going to answer you, but you
right,
still do it because it's a numbers game, right? Like I think people use this as an excuse because I also do election law and I work on campaigns with people. And so I have clients who often don't want to do phone calls or don't want to knock doors. And they say, well, it's because people don't answer the phone or answer the door anyway. And it may be true that most people don't, but you get to talk to a lot of voters by putting those reps in, right? Like I got a guy, Steven, doesn't have any legs. So he's not going to be walking the neighborhood knocking doors. You know what he's great at? Staying home and calling thousands of voters. And he'll spend every single day on the phone call after phone call after phone. He loves it, right? Not everyone is built for that. He loves it. And guess what? I don't know, maybe 60, 70, 80% sometimes don't answer. But when you're
yeah,
calling thousands of people every single day, do you know how many great conversations you get to have with voters? And so the guy who
right,
says, I'm not going to call because people don't answer the phone. They had zero. They get zero calls, which means
Right.
zero votes from those calls, right?
Right.
He's out there doing thousands, thousands. So he's having many, 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 many great calls with voters, even though most people aren't answering him. And
Right.
so I take that same principle now to the music, right? Because I'm thinking, for example, something like TikTok. It is about putting those reps in, right? You do a TikTok video, and let's say 1,000 people watch it. All right, maybe most of those people are just going to watch it for a few seconds and scroll through or not pay attention or whatever. But again, it goes back to the numbers. If I keep doing that, if I keep getting these thousands, thousands, thousands all the time, you're starting to build up the number of people who are paying attention, right? So
Right.
even if, as a matter of percentage, maybe the number
Right.
isn't great, the raw number still grows the more reps you put in,
Right.
and then you can see that's how you can scale anything. By the way, that's how you can scale your business, right? Oh yeah, I'm gonna have a few clients now. Well, keep doing what you're doing, you'll get more. If you can find ways to replicate that on a larger scale, then it'll maybe start to grow exponentially. But you can see, you have data that you can go off of, and you can see how to grow, how to get from point A to point B based on the numbers, right?
Right.
That's something I really learned from doing in politics. It's all about the
Right.
numbers, right? I can take that same approach now to music and to branding in other areas.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely. And the component after that becomes like you said, the work ethic, like actually doing the execution of it. Like, and that can be as difficult. Um,
Right.
or even more, because those making those 1,000 calls and 70% don't answer.
Right.
And then the ones that do
I was
answer,
going to say another 15% might curse at you.
right. Yeah, so that can be very difficult to deal with.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have to kind of
Yeah,
desensitize yourself to it, right?
right. And it's the same with music.
Yeah, exactly. Become more like a computer. And we do that in politics. We have a scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, right? Five is like you get spit on, basically. They curse at you.
Right,
That
right,
means that they really don't like you. They're very likely not going to vote for you, right? That's a five. A one is they love you, right? And there's everything in
right.
between. And so this is obviously useful data to have. So you have to kind of
Yeah.
treat yourself like you're the computer, you're the algorithm or whatever, right? You get slapped in the face. Oh, I guess that's a five. Next house, and that's just how you
Right, right,
don't
right,
take it
right.
personally.
Right. Yeah. And then like with the music, like I don't know, these days it's not so much, I don't think, at least. But remember the days when you would walk through New York, like especially Times Square, and there was like 100 people trying to hand you their
Yeah,
CD, and it's
yeah,
like, oh, another CD.
yeah.
Like, but at some point, someone's going to take the CD, someone's going to listen to it, you know. But
Right, there
yeah,
are
that
people. I never did that, but
I
I knew
didn't know,
a lot
me
of people
neither.
who did it. In fact, this guy that we knew came to New York from Texas, I think it was, and he's like, I always wanted to do that. I guess he knew about it, that it was being done in
Right,
Times Square. So he's like, I always wanted to go to Times Square and sell CDs. And he did it for like 2 or 3 days straight. And yeah, he made several sales. I mean, he actually had a lot of money at the end of that because he
right,
was willing to stand out there for like 12 hours a day getting harassed.
right,
But
right,
if you're willing to put yourself through that, you do see results.
right. So it's yeah, it can be tough. It's tough. And that can be. It is tough regardless. So
Yeah.
respect anyone doing that. I do there was one point that I wanted to make, and I don't know if you got a chance to check it out. There was and this is related to the getting music out and relating, especially for artists. There's a clip from DJ Jazzy Jeff, and it looked like he was addressing either a room full of people, and just kind of imparting some wisdom. And he said something that I found really fascinating, interesting.
Mhm.
He said, "Die empty." And he was talking about as a creative, as an artist, you probably have a lot of stuff that's either completed or half completed that just never seen the light of day.
Right.
And it's like, get it out, get everything
Mhm.
out and die empty. Clear it out so that you can make room for other things if you're going to keep creating. He's like, give some away, sell some. And he used the example of Jay Dilla. He's like, when Jay Dilla knew that his time was coming to an end, he just got into it and got as much creativity out as he could and just started shuffling beats off. That's why you're still seeing people come out with new Jay Dilla produced tracks. Drez from Black Sheep has got a new album coming out, and it's all Jay Dilla produced. And like he's been dead for over 10 years now.
Yeah.
And so he's like, as a creative, die empty. Don't leave your creativity inside and get out as much as you can. And then you can grow as well from doing that.
Get it out of yourself. I agree with that. I don't agree that you should release everything to the public.
Well,
That not everything
as
that you
far as
create. We had the conversation on here before, right?
get
That
it
you,
out as far as doing it.
yes, yeah, yeah. Well, here's a good example of that. I know you've experienced this also. When you get together with people who do music, they always want to create something new. Every right, it's always like the activity of getting together and starting on a new song, and no one ever wants to finish those songs that you start. So if you get together with them for a few hours, you might start a new song. Then the next week you get together again. If you say to them, "Hey, why don't we finish the song we started last week?" They're like, "Oh no, I want to start something." They'd rather have like 100 half-finished songs than one finished song because
Right.
the excitement is creating something new,
Right,
start from
right,
scratch,
right.
creating, not putting in the reps to fine tune something and finish it. That's not as fun or as
Well,
exciting.
that's work. That's the work
Yeah,
part.
right,
Yeah, yeah,
right. They like the idea of sparking a new idea and
yeah,
inventing
yeah.
something, right? Creating something from nothing. That is fun,
It
but
is.
you do need to be able to fit. I mean, if you want to actually release your music, and I guess even not just release it to the public per se, but like you were saying here, get it out of view, right? Like you want to be able to finish one idea before going on to all your other ones. I mean, you might have a couple going at the same time, but
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think it's good for you to have like a million undeveloped ideas out there and nothing finished.
Yeah, I've got a million undeveloped ideas.
But have you finished any of them? Hopefully, some of them.
Yeah, some are finished. I've got a lot finished. Like I've got a 22 track instrumental album of lo-fi hip hop beats that I finished about 2 years ago that I intended to, I was just gonna put it out on YouTube and just have it like background study type music and production type of things. But I never put it out and didn't, but I've got stuff like that. I've got,
Right.
albums worth of songs
Yeah.
that
Oh,
I've
yeah.
recorded.
Yeah. I got a whole album that I recorded and scrapped and started again. I mean, but
Right,
that's
right.
the process.
Yeah. So now I'm thinking at least some of the verses from some albums and things, or even
Right.
old verses, there's still good, it's still good
Yes.
stuff
Yeah.
and good
That is true.
content.
That's a
And
very
like,
good point, right? Sometimes we almost handicap ourselves by thinking,
yeah,
oh, this didn't come out exactly as I intended, therefore there's no merit or value in it. No, maybe it's still written great. Maybe it just needs a different beat. Maybe it needs a tweak. Maybe you have to respit it. Maybe you have to rework it in certain ways. But the
or
idea is
maybe,
probably not always, but often something in there that you can use. And just
right,
because you've been sitting on it for 10 years doesn't mean anyone else has heard it. So it's still new to them.
right. Or maybe it's a good acapella that you can
Yeah.
spit on your social media or
Right.
just anywhere,
It's true. That's true. Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Rap to your friends, whatever. But it's just, it's the source material that you got.
yeah.
It's,
So,
it's a very good point.
so, all right. Well, what else we have this week?
Well, we wanted to talk about breakdancing at the Olympics. I mentioned that at the
We
top.
did want to talk a little bit about breakdancing at the Olympics, but let's say from the top, lead off with that is congratulations to Ami Yuasa and Ami Yuasa from Japan and Phil Wizard from Canada, who took the gold medals, the first ever gold medals in breakdancing at the Olympics.
Yeah.
So that's a beautiful thing. It's big, and I think it's a net positive for hip hop and for the culture. So congratulations to them. I know there was controversy that has kind of overshadowed the conversation, but I think those winners, and then of course Nika from Lithuania and 617 from China, Danny Dan from France, and Victor from the USA got
You had the
the
names
silvers and
memorized.
bronze. Yeah, I think I think it's important because we could go into a deep rabbit hole about the controversy that happened, and that's like I said, that's been the conversation, and it's gonna be the conversation for a while. But I think these dancers should have a lot of that conversation for being the winners and being coming out on top and setting that historical precedent. So
You mean not the Australian dancer who did the rubber chicken routine?
yes,
Uh,
Ray Gunn, Rachel
chicken
Doctor.
spin on his back, Here you go. Chickens.
Dr. Rachel Gunn. I've been trying to avoid making a video because uh, there's more, there's layers to this point here. It's
Right.
not just that she was had a poor routine, and she did have a poor routine. But there can also be, if you go and look and read some of her writings, her academic writings, because she has a PhD in culture and she researches on breakdancing and that type of thing in hip hop. And so and she lectures at a university in Australia on these topics. And you go through and do some of the readings on her writings, and there's a lot that can be picked apart there that plays into the performance at the Olympics.
Was
Uh,
it satire?
there's there's things that make it seem like she's purposefully trying to look at hip hop or view hip hop through the lens of other paradigms. Like she's trying to put that on top of it because she feels excluded and she feels entitled to be able to change hip hop. Like she can come in and do what it is that she wants in that regard. Because so for example, she writes that basically as a white female from Australia, she doesn't have the access to the authenticity that is required in hip hop, and that authenticity should not be a marker. And so that basically authenticity really shouldn't be a part of it, or that she can
It's like, is
go
it about
around that.
authenticity? It was just a bad dance routine. I mean, I
Well,
think
she's
it,
talking about in general. This was in her
yeah,
writing. It's talking about in general, as far as a marker in the hip hop culture. Authenticity is one of the things. She's like, it's a
sure.
meritocracy, and
Okay, yeah, but it almost sounds like she's conflating some ideas here because it is very hip hop
exactly,
to be authentically true to yourself, right? The
exactly,
Japanese dancers who were killing it, were they not hip hop? They were very
right,
hip hop and they were very authentic and true to who they were. And so,
right.
what does that even mean?
That's my point. Like it's like she's conflating this idea and not fully understanding something she's supposed to be a subject matter expert on, is that you can still be even, you don't have to go and spend like, a year in the hood or in the projects in
You
the
have to break dance
Bronx.
on Cedric Avenue.
Right. You don't have to do that to be considered authentic. And that's where she seems to be misinformed on and thinks of that idea of authenticity as being gatekeeping in hip hop. Whereas the gatekeeping part of that authenticity is more about you showing that passion for the culture, you having that respect for the
Yeah,
culture and putting in those reps, putting in that
right.
time, showing that love and unity. That's where you get accepted. That's where you
Yeah.
get to be brought in, not
And
because you came from one person
yeah,
or
and
one
doing
place.
something different would gain her a lot of props, a lot of recognition if
Absolutely.
it was seen as good, right? If there was
Right.
merit to it, if there was artistic value, if she
Right.
was really pushing the envelope in a way that made people go, "Whoa, like that's crazy. I wish I could do that." Like that would be very hip hop and that would be very authentic, and that wouldn't be anything that people really should give her a hard time about. I think it
Right.
was that the performance just came off like almost a mockery.
It came off like a mockery. And in hip hop and in breakdance or in any of the art forms, any of the core elements of hip hop, be it MCing, DJing, breaking, or graffiti, artistic expression and creativity is highly prized. But
Yeah,
there are some basic tenets to that
right,
that
right,
identify this as that art form.
right.
And so breakdancing is not interpretive dance, like where you can just go in there and just do any old kind of thing and people are going to be like, "Oh my God, that's awesome." There are still some tenets that you have to latch on to, and she was throwing a lot of those out the window because of, and I feel because partly her view of this idea that, well, I can't be authentic, so I'm going to do whatever I want to be. And there's an entitlement to think that I can do this.
Yeah, that feels like an excuse.
It does. It does. And it also is an issue with some academics where they want to come in from this academic point of view and they miss the cultural part of it. They miss that connection part of it. And I think she may fall into that trap, but also there are those people who just have that, some people would say, that hippie type of, oh yeah, whatever, dude, type of thing. And that's fine. But in certain spaces, you have to have, there still has to be some grounding
Yeah,
to what
but
it
it's
is.
also easy. I mean, to me, I don't know. I think it's easy in a sense that being authentic is very hip hop, right? It's seen
Right.
doing
Sure.
something your own, like putting your own spin on things. Like you said, there's still certain foundational principles, but putting your own spin on it, doing something a little bit different. You're doing something in your own way.
Right.
Uh, injecting your own cultural background or upbringing or experiences into hip hop. That
Right.
is considered very hip hop. So it should be
Absolutely.
easy, right? In a sense of to be authentic, all you got to really do is be yourself and be good at it. Right? It's really it's
Right.
not like it's not rocket science. It's almost like she's making it too academic and tripping herself up.
Right. I think, and some of it is being too academic. Some of it is her own inadequacy, feelings of inadequacy, because she feels that she can't be that authentic or that part of hip hop
Here's the
because she
thing.
comes from Australia, because she's a white woman, and because she's kind of removed from, I guess, the Bronx, so to speak. She didn't name that specifically, but it's just like she
Here's my
can't be.
question.
There are B-boys and B-girls all around the world.
If she feels that way, why was she at the Olympics?
Well, that's the thing, right? So that's, people are questioning, why are you at the Olympics, period. And from what I've seen to gather from some of the readings and whatnot in the statements, is that they were trying to make sure that the scene was represented in the Olympics, which I think is good. How she became the forefront of that is
Right.
really weird, because
She
I
is at the forefront
know.
of the Australian breakdancing scene. I mean, so it means let me ask you this: if you were to go to Australia and ask before the Olympics, before this, right? A month ago, if you were to go to Australia and you were to ask people who are the hottest b boys and b girls around here, would her name come up?
Maybe. So here's the thing. I went back and watched the qualifying rounds, the rounds that she won to get to the Olympics, because she had to beat people in
Yeah,
competitions to get that spot. And so I went
that's
back
very
and I watched those. And the commentators were commentating on it, and one of them called her an Aussie legend. Um,
but you
she's
could be an
well
Aussie
known,
legend for other things, maybe because of her academics. I mean, was it
but
for
Aussie legend in the scene. So
in breakdancing in particular?
right, so that kind of got me thinking, like, okay, maybe, she's
Was she like
putting
that one who would always go, like hang out with them, and then she was just like
right, right,
for so
right.
long. They were like, all right, like they're kind of a fixture here. We got to put up with them.
And she won, apparently this year, she won sports personality of the year as a break dancer in Australia.
Were
I
her
saw
other
the
routines that
no, they were all this way. They were
really?
all like this.
And was
Even,
she beating people who were actually breakdancing well?
well, here's the thing, the qualifying rounds, it seems like seems that the participants were all inexperienced break dancers.
Okay.
And if you watch it, you'll see that she, even, there were people that were, I think, what was her name? Holly Molly or something like that, or Molly, something like that, that she won in the final for that qualifier. And Molly was better than her, but not by much. So there were a lot of inexperienced people in that competition. So it begs the question, where were the more
Yeah.
experienced people?
And I know there are breakdancers in Australia.
There are definitely some hip hoppers in
Yeah.
Australia. There
Yeah.
definitely, we, you
Yeah.
know, um, so that's raised all kinds of questions, right? Some people on social media have been saying, and you can't trust social media completely, but some in the scene are saying, well, we never heard about the qualifiers. So some are speculating that this was them keeping it to themselves so they
Right.
could push forward an agenda.
That was going to be my next question, actually. Is
That's
that
that's one of the
possibly the case?
speculations.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, because from what an article that I read, was that when this came about, right, that hip hop or breakdance was going to be in the Olympics, was that the scene kind of scrambled to try to, because you have to comply with certain regulations to make this happen. You have to have a federation formed. You have to have certain things set up. And so like the scene and the organization that was going to spearhead this was trying to scramble to get these things set up. And so some of the more experienced people were taking some admin roles in these
Right.
things and couldn't be participants.
Right.
Um, and so maybe they lost out in that regard. But still, that doesn't, to me, is not a, it doesn't give me enough clarification. I'm sure there
Yeah.
were
Yeah.
more experienced B
You know what?
girls in the scene.
This sounds like a documentary. Maybe we should go to Australia and do a documentary. It could be a short form documentary. We could turn it into micro content for TikTok. Make it like a 20
Go to
part.
Australia. Right. It just get a man on the scene type of stuff. Now,
Yeah, yeah, and investigate, right? Talk to the people who are at the tryouts, and yeah, talk to people who didn't hear about it. Talk to people in the scene. Show people in Australian hip hop who actually do this and would have done a much better job repping the culture. I mean, there's content there.
I think there definitely is. And so one of the other controversies is that they're saying that her husband was one of the judges on the panel, but and one of the heads of the federation that was formed. But that's misinformation. He was not on that panel. He was not one of the judges. However, he became the Olympic coach for the team. And you go and watch him dance, he dances exactly like she dances. So he's the one that taught
As a
her.
coach,
He was the one that
I don't know. You can write the book on this, Reggie. You've done extensive research on this.
like I said, I got into it because I know some activists in Australia. I know people in the hip hop culture, and
Wait, we
so
had someone like that on our show.
we did. And so I'm having conversations with people from Australia, and because at first it was just like, oh wow, that was just horrible. That was
Right.
whack. And then I started learning a little bit more about, I get sending articles and looking at her writings and looking at some of this, and then it started getting a little offensive and upsetting.
Mhm.
And so I started doing more of the reading and the research on some of it. And like I said, I've been holding back on trying to put together a video or a thought on it, even though I guess I've done some of
Yeah,
it here. But because the idea really is that conversation and this attention and the documentary type of thing really should be more on Ami and Phil Wizard, who won the first ever
true,
thing, so
true.
that the culture can
That
move
okay.
forward.
See, a bottom line is forming because that goes back to our initial conversation about how the negative gets more attention than the positive today,
Right.
right?
Right. Right. So, like if this is the conversation around her, and it is the conversation, unfortunately, that's what the conversation is, and there's reason for it. That's not even, we're not even saying that it shouldn't be talked about. It absolutely should. But if this becomes the main conversation, then the question is that makes it less likely for something like this to happen again in the future, for breakdancing to be in
Yeah,
a
yeah.
subsequent Olympics at some point, because
Yeah,
then it
so let's
becomes
get there
okay.
because it's not going to be part of the Olympics in 2028. What we heard.
Right. In LA. It's not going to be, but they're already lobbying for it to be at the one after that, which is going to be in Australia, kind of ironically, I believe. Um, and so if we want the organizers, the IOC, and the worldwide culture to look at this as it was a positive experience, then the conversation should be about the winners, about how it went from a niche subculture in the Bronx all the way to the worldwide audience, to the Olympics, to people on stage. Like we can talk about how the Australian Olympic president had come out in defense of Ray Gunn, saying, "Oh, well, this is kind of misogyny, the criticism against her." But we can throw that aside as an excuse because it is, and look at, well, look at all the performers. Nobody was criticizing any of the other women that participated in there. I mean, there was one, the girl from Lithuania, but that disappeared after her skills were shown. Um, and look at how there were competitors from Japan, from China, from again Lithuania. There was a refugee competitor who had really no country to fly under, but wanted to dance and came to represent
Yeah,
as a statement, which is very much hip hop. right? Same with, in the men's side. There was people from, Australia area, Canada, America, and
Be very meta for there to be a hip hop team at the breakdancing event because you know how KRS-One always talks about he got the United Nations to recognize hip hop as its own culture. Imagine hip
right.
hop sent its own team to the Olympics. And would it be unfair if there was a hip hop team at breakdancing because that's their own sport?
That would be amazing. That would be definitely amazing.
I don't
So,
represent any country. I represent the hip hop nation. Imagine that.
right, yeah.
Well,
So,
anyway, before we go on here, I have to award the rubber chicken of the week to Raygun. Is that her name?
Raygon, yeah.
For and for this reason specifically, for saying that she could not be authentically hip hop yet participating in a hip hop event at the Olympics nonetheless. We've got the rubber chicken of the week.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And
So
she's self-admittedly a part-time participant.
yeah. So putting aside the negative for a second, I did want to give props to Homeboy Sandman, right? He came
Yes.
to our album release party as a fan, really, just a guy checking out the show. And here he is, his song now being used as a backdrop for this breakdancing at the Olympics.
Yeah. Yeah. Dope song. The Carpenter, produced by Two Hungry Bros.
Yeah.
And
He
this is
actually,
this
do you remember, by the way, before, it might have been a couple of years before, maybe 1 year before our album release party, he actually did a show with us. He performed, I think he might have opened the show for us, but he performed the same night as us.
where
Um,
was this at?
this was in Manhattan. I forget the name of the place. Was it
Was that the
Alphabet
Knitting
Lounge?
Factory?
No, no, it was a smaller venue. It was
Okay.
at, I believe it was that venue where that guy was trying to kind of play us. Remember the promoter was, I think it was that same night. The promoter put us on late intentionally or something like that.
I
A
remember
scenario.
that.
I forget exactly what happened. I know we got annoyed at the promoter for the way that he played it, but Homeboy Sandman might have been the first artist. He might have opened that show, and then I think we went on last. But I think what it was they put so many artists in between that by the time we got on, it was like 3 o'clock in the morning or something like that, and the crowd was almost all gone.
Yeah. That used to annoy me. I like, frequently, I mean, we perform in different things, and even in showcases where we would be the not in the showcase, but we would be the invited guest performer,
Right,
like like the
the
headline
headline act.
performer, so to speak. But then you end up being the one that's last on the bill
Right,
because you're like the guest. But a lot of people leave before
right,
that
right.
happens,
Especially because when it's a showcase,
especially
I
if
don't
it's
know if this
small.
was a showcase or not. I think it was a regular show, but with the showcases in particular, people perform and they bring some of their friends to watch
Right.
them perform. And so what ends up happening is when an act performs, oftentimes they leave after their own set and their friends leave with them.
Right,
And
right,
right
right.
as all of the acts start performing and leaving, the crowd gets smaller and smaller because they're bringing their friends out with them. And then
Yeah.
who's left at the end?
Right. We should have been like, let's switch it around. Listen, we're the guest performers here. We should start the show. We should lead off the show.
Yeah. Or yeah, sometimes the crowd isn't all there in the beginning either. Maybe at the height of the night
Break it up in the middle.
right in the middle. Yeah. Right before intermission.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
I think
true.
we have
Because
to
people,
start doing that. I know we were trying to sometimes tell them not to have so many people on the bill, but also I think like with Randy and Winter, I believe when we first performed for them, we went on last, and it was the same type of deal. It was only them and their friends left because it was so late, and they saw that we kind of killed it, and they were like, "Well, next time we're gonna put you on a better time slot." And I think going forward, they did that for us, where
right.
they made sure to put us on at the height of the night.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah. Like that was always like, it's dope being like the guest performer, but like, yeah. Yeah. Oh well.
but shout out to
Good
him.
days.
Shout out to Homeboy Sandman because he definitely performed at our show and came just to check out our album release party when we did it. So he was in the spot with us a few times, and here he is now having his song featured at the Olympics. So that's pretty dope.
Yeah, very dope. So shout out to him. Congrats. And ironically, it kind of fits in because Homeboy Sandman is one who very much does it differently than everyone else because he doesn't have any social media. He
Mm,
doesn't have Twitter. He doesn't have Instagram.
that's interesting.
He's
I didn't
never
know.
really had it. He's got a Facebook artist page, and that's it.
I
But
well, no, he had. I don't know if he still does. He definitely was my Facebook friend for a while.
he
Just
doesn't
as
have that anymore
his
because he
own
used to have a
personal.
personal Facebook friend,
Yeah, yeah,
Facebook page.
yeah.
Doesn't have that anymore either.
Okay. Then how
So,
do you maintain your artist page without a Facebook? I think you need. Don't you need one? Get
yeah,
someone else
but
to.
he can deactivate that part, I believe.
Can you?
Uh,
I don't know.
and I think they made it where you don't need
Maybe
the
maybe they changed
personal one anymore. I don't know.
it.
But I
Okay.
think that's the probably, the only social media presence and maybe a YouTube account where he puts the videos. But
All right.
as far as engaging in social media activity, he's never done that.
Yeah. Yeah. Pretty crazy how in today's world there are people. They're outliers, right? But there are
Right.
people who can find success even without social
Right.
media. I think that's the dream for
Right.
most artists. Most people probably don't want to be on social media if they can help it, right? I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'm biased. Maybe my perspective is skewed, but I always feel like social media is seen almost as a necessary evil. People are on it because they need to brand themselves. But if they didn't need to
Right.
do that, they probably wouldn't be on as much.
I attribute his success to he took it to the core. Like his success to me was networking.
Yeah.
Um, because in the scene, he was at everyone's show. He went to everybody's event. He was a big supporter of everybody. And like I said, he came to our release parties. And so that way you make your face seen, you make connections with artists, you make connections with the scene. And so when it came time for his first album release party, I remember it was packed. It was literally a who's who of the hip hop scene because he had shown that love to everybody else.
Mhm.
And so I think that's how he maintains
Yeah,
his.
but could you do that today?
Yeah, I think he could. I
You could.
mean,
How? How could you network that way without social media?
well, he didn't have social media then. He went
That
to
was,
the shows.
but
He
that
went
was
to the
back when there were a
events.
ton of shows. That's my point.
Yeah. Yeah. I
Back
don't
then,
know.
In New York City, there were like 5 shows a week, and he was at all of them. And
Right.
now I have a hard time finding a show if I'm trying to go. Like there's some stuff that
Right.
happens at SOBs, bigger artists usually. We
Right,
buy
right, right.
tickets, and it's more like a concert, right? Like a major concert almost, but not like these shows that we used to see and be part of, where it was like all the different clubs, like remember Bowery Poetry Club and
Knitting Factory.
GBs was one of them, I think, right? That was a big one, but it's
the-
also small in size. Yeah,
Yeah. The,
different.
the Wonder Twins parties.
Right. There was just so much stuff happening, and you basically walk around Manhattan and just wander into spots, and there'll be some hip hop going on, live hip hop going on. You know what I mean? That scene seems to be dead.
It could be. Or at least it's very, very subdued, not like it was.
Yeah.
But I think the core of that is that human connection that's showing up. And it's the same thing that we talked about with earlier with a politician and people going out doing the um but like when we did the petitioning, right? And they're like, remember the people were surprised that you were out there. Oh, the candidate's actually here, like, and that made a difference for a lot of
I still
people.
get that when I knock on doors, believe it or not.
Exactly.
Sometimes
Right.
people say to me, wow, I can't believe the candidate came to my house. Someone said to me, I've been living in Rockaway for 10 years. You're the first candidate who actually showed up to my door and asked for a vote. And guess what? They voted for me, right? Because I
Right.
was
And so I think
powerful.
that human connection that brings that element back. Advertising is great and it's very effective, but it's also a little bit impersonal in that it's not a face-to-face connection. Whereas I
I just
think that
don't think the opportunities are there anymore in music
right,
specifically or entertainment like it was.
right,
Now it's all about TikTok. It's all about going online. And we talked about that does have its benefits,
right,
but
right. There's no
you,
fat beats anymore. You
yeah,
know what I mean?
exactly the in stores. Remember that? That used to be a thing, right? You
Right,
put out a record and go to the stores to promote it, perform in
right.
the stores,
Matter of fact,
get it on
it's
consignment.
funny. It's funny because a friend of ours, Lucko from
Yeah,
Australia,
yeah.
he came to New York and he had visited. Remember that time he came to New
Yes, I
York?
took him to a Q-tip party and he was very surprised. He was very in awe of the fact that he was standing 2 feet from Q-tip and he walked right by us.
Well, I took him to because he was staying with me, and I took him to an in-store. No, it wasn't an in-store. I took him to Fat Beats because he wanted to pick up some records.
Okay.
And just so happened we were in Fat Beats, Homeboy Sandman came in.
Yeah, yeah.
And I introduced him. I was like, "You're picking up records. Look, this is a cat out." And he was new. He didn't have a lot of people. I think it was just dropped. What was this? Is Godson? No, not Godson. What was it? Something Son was the name of his album. I forget what it was. But he had just dropped his first album, and I'm like, "Listen, this guy is dope." I introduced him to local. I said, "This guy is dope. If you're looking for new music stuff you haven't heard, you definitely want to check this out." They talked a little bit. Loco picked up his album, and he loved it and whatnot. So it was funny that we mentioned that because
Yeah.
that's that connection, that human connection. You got
Right.
to.
By the way, this just, I guess is indicative of how far back this goes now. Homeboy Sandman, I do recall, had a blog. That was his social media early on. He
Oh,
actually had
did
a
he?
personal blog. I remember this, yeah, because I remember a story about how he said when he was growing up, he had roaches in the kitchen. I think he said he would purposely leave the lights off at night in the kitchen and then run out in the middle of the night, turn the lights on, and then he'd have like a shoe and he'd try to kill all the roaches at once. But he would
Wow.
write these stories on his blog that he would put out
Wow.
there. And that was kind of a way I think that he was trying to connect with people also by telling these personal stories about himself. But that's
Yeah.
like pre-social media, right? But he was kind of
Right.
working that back then. I think he kind of fell back when it came to the more modern social media, but he was already built up at that point where he really didn't need to. He already had a following. So,
Right. I
you
think
know,
it's probably, yeah, I think part of his
I think it
strategy,
would be more difficult to try that now.
it could be, but there's still showcases, maybe not as many,
It's not the
but
same, man. But like, yeah, so I'm saying, like, he would be out there every single night going to things.
yeah, I
I'm
mean,
surprised.
there were networking showcases
Yeah, there's
before.
not. I look for this stuff, man. I wish there was stuff like that. I look for it. I can't find anything anymore. Nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
believe me. I mean, if they had that stuff going on, I would be there now.
right.
So, yeah, maybe we got set up. So I actually reached out to Randy not long ago. He said that they do some stuff. So I want to talk to him. Maybe we can get more
Yeah.
shows going on with them.
Maybe that might be a thing. Set up a night in Rockaway. You know, a venue. Let's get something.
It was a really good spot that closed
There's
down.
artists. There are artists out there. The thing is, there's still artists.
Oh
People
yeah,
still
yeah,
want to express themselves.
right, right.
Yeah.
But I do see this from newer artists. Not all of them, but I've seen the sentiment expressed. They don't want to do live shows. A lot of them, or they'll
Yeah.
say the point to say, "I don't tour. Why would I do that? I don't do live shows.
Right.
Why would I do that? All I gotta do is post a TikTok and I get more views that way. I ain't gonna go leave my house. And do, you know what I mean? People have that mentality now too.
Sure. Sure. And that kind of feeds into that other thing that we were going to mention as far as that video where artists were talking about they
Oh
don't
yeah.
write anymore. They
So
just punch
before we
in.
do that, let's wrap up this breakdancing topic because we
Okay,
want
go for it. Yeah.
all of the week. Also, there were people saying that breakdancing, number one, shouldn't be at the Olympics, and number two, isn't even really a sport. And some of that I think just was anti-hip hop,
Sure.
racist, right? Somebody made a wisecrack, what's next, rap music at the Olympics, and might have been a shot at me. I don't know. But there are people saying that it's not appropriate. Some maybe who aren't anti hip hop per se, but don't understand how dancing is considered a sport at
Right.
all. And I kind of have questions. I think it's worth a discussion or a consideration as to is it really a sport and what makes it a sport, right? What makes
Right.
something a sport? Sure, you can look up the dictionary definition and that kind of thing, but there's also connotation, right? There's denotation and there's connotation and context and just kind of how society and culture approaches these issues. And there's always been debate as to what can be a sport. I see sometimes people ask, are esports sports, right? Or you know how they have people playing video games, and some people consider that to be an actual sport. There's some people say, come on, there's no athletic ability required. People all have these different ideas as to what makes it a sport. Obviously, when it comes to breakdancing, it does to do it well, it does require athleticism.
Oh,
And
yeah, absolutely.
it's
Strength.
right
Yeah.
in that sense, maybe more of a sport than other forms of dancing. But
Right.
I think there's still a question to be asked there about where do you
Right.
draw the line? What makes something a sport and what makes something worthy of being an Olympic sport?
Right. It doesn't have, but doesn't even have to be classified as a sport to be in the Olympics. It can be an Olympic event. Someone brought up the point that um, if you look at it, it's as far as the athleticism and the movements, it's not that different from the gymnastics floor dancing, the that routines where they're just running back and forth doing their tumbling passes and dancing to music.
Mhm.
So how is that how is that considered a sport and a competition, whereas
Is it?
this isn't? Well,
Yeah,
it is for the
the
Olympics to
Olympics, but
have
I
an
think you
event.
can call that into question as well, right?
Right.
Is that appropriately an Olympic sport? I mean, then
Right.
you have
Or
the
call it an
distinction
Olympic
between a
event.
sport and a game. This isn't really a game, right? But some people will say, like, for example, pool, right? That's always, I think, debated. The
Right.
billiards.
Right.
Some people, that's a game. No, it's a sport. No, it's a game. Golf. I think most people call golf a sport, but there are some who say, listen, you're just standing there hitting a ball. You're not running around, not really exerting yourself.
Right. Right. So I would say event. Does it even have to be
Yes.
a sport?
Is
It's an
chess a
Olympic
sport?
event. It's an Olympic event, and in the spirit of competition,
Yeah. But
I
it's
would
also
go that.
nice to have a competition. And there are plenty of Olympic events like this where
Sure,
it's subjective. It's not like you have,
curling is not a sport.
right, but with curling, you have a clear winner, right? I mean, I don't know the rules of
Right,
it, but I would assume if you get over the finish line first, you get a point or you win or
right,
whatever.
right,
Right?
right,
I
right.
mean, there's an objective way of measuring who won the game. With this and with a lot of I mean, obviously with
A
figure
lot of
skating,
them.
so a lot of
Gymnastics, figure
right, a lot of stuff.
skating.
It's it's the judges giving it a scale from 0 to 10, right? So it's subjective in that way. So I guess that's culturally just what we accept as being part of the Olympics, and in
Right,
that way, this would fall in the same category. But how is it not just dancing?
right.
I don't know.
So
I mean, because if you have this, I guess the question then becomes, what are the criteria? Is it whatever the host country wants it to be? Is it arbitrary? Are there certain clear defined parameters?
yes, there were parameters, but again, if you anything when you have judges, they're going to have to
No,
make
no,
up.
but I'm saying as far as qualifying it as a possible Olympic event, right? Like if you're
No.
saying that breakdancing can become an Olympic event, well then can ballroom dancing be an Olympic event? Can anything? Can line dancing? Um,
It's funny that you say
When
ballroom.
chicken dance. I mean, like what you know what I mean? Like where do you draw the line?
It's funny that you said ballroom dancing because the organizing body, the World Dance Sport Federate, yeah, World Dance Sport Federation or organization that did the push to help get this into the Olympics is a ballroom dancing organization, and they've been trying for years to get ballroom dancing in the Olympics, but it came to the realization and that no one cared about it's too antiquated for ballroom dancing. It's not interesting enough to make it to the Olympics, and
Right.
then for some reason they shift to breakdancing because it was the possibility to capture the youth. So some people
Yeah.
think that they were using hip hop or using breakdancing as a way to still get their ultimate goal of getting ballroom dancing
I
in.
see. So there's gonna be all different types of dancing now. You start with break dance and then you move to other types of dancing
Right.
until ballroom. Maybe ballroom comes in like right after the waltz or something.
I don't know, maybe. So, but it's funny you mentioned that. So
Yeah.
yeah, I mean that's kind of another debate. People are saying should it be even classified as a sport? I don't think it needs to be classified as a sport. And a lot of people that I've seen in hip hop don't say it's a sport because it's a culture or it's an
Yeah.
artistic
Yeah.
expression.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean it can't be an event. It doesn't have to be a sporting event. It could just be an event, a competition. There were
When you think
competitions
of
all over.
the Olympics, we do think of at least athletics, which is
It's
commonly,
athletic. It's
but that's
definitely
commonly associated with sports, right? Sporting events, athletics.
it's definitely athletic though.
But there are other things, there are other activities that are athletic, which you probably wouldn't think belong in the Olympics.
No, but
Or you can have a push-up contest next year. That's athletic.
yeah, but there's not whole, organizations and competitions, push-up competitions around the world constantly. There is in breakdancing,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you've got the
Well,
Red
now,
Bull competitions.
which
You've got,
activity is best organized? Is that how you determine it?
I don't know if you say which is best organized, but I think there's a lot of good arguments for breakdancing to be included as an Olympic event.
What about something like graffiti
I can see
or
against
DJing?
it
What
too.
about DJing or graffiti?
Um, I could see more for DJing than graffiti
Okay,
because
so you don't think that athleticism should be a component of what makes something an Olympic event?
um it could be. No, it should be. If you're talking athletes, yeah, athleticism could be.
DJing, right? You don't need to be a good athlete to be a DJ.
Right. I'm looking at the spectator aspect of it, right? Some watching someone paint graffiti is not going to be very exciting to watch necessarily. Not that it can't be. I'm just saying that you think
You know, I'm
about things
thinking
in the Olympics
Scribble
as a
Jam. You're right, because when you went to the Scribble Jam battles, they started having a breakdancing battle. Obviously, there was the MC battle. They had a
right,
DJ battle. They did have graffiti, but it was done a little bit different. It wasn't like, all right, let's bring out the graffiti writers on stage and make them draw their pieces. It was
right,
while the whole weekend was unfolding, they were out there marking up the walls. And then I think at the end of the weekend, you kind of looked at who had the best work collectively by the event's
right.
end. But it
And then
wasn't
you wouldn't want them to do you wouldn't want them to do speed rounds to compromise their art either, because then it's like, you know. But I think, I'm not against I'm not against breakdancing being an event in the Olympics. However, there is the danger of it being in the Olympics, and a lot of people in the breakdancing community have raised this issue that since it's something in the Olympics, it has to comply with certain Olympic rules and regulations that all the other events have to comply with. And there's the danger of it being co-opted or taken over, and the essence of it being broadcast as something else because it had to fit in this box. And so that could be the new influence for what breakdancing becomes, and it means the Olympics would change the culture.
I mean, judging by that Australian's performance, that ship might have already sailed.
It's possible, but I think there's going to be a lot of people who are going to. I mean, there's a lot pushing back, especially inside. I mean, even the culture.
Kind of like we like you better when you were underground kind of thing.
Well, no, more of that's not a representation of what we do.
Well, you're right. But remember when the message came out, right? The actual MCs of the time was like, that's not what we do. It's not supposed to be on wax. It's not supposed to be recorded. It's something we do
Yeah,
live in
sure.
the club, right? It's
Right,
not
right, yeah.
sold commercially. That's not hip hop. So I
Right,
think
yeah.
the mentality was there from the beginning. It's not hip hop if it's consumed by the masses.
There's that, but also like those moves and that type of thing is, there
Rappers
we
Delight, by the way.
we
I meant
do have
Rappers
some
Delight.
standards.
I
Oh,
meant Rappers Delight, not the message.
huh? Oh yeah, Rapper's Delight, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like we do have some standards. We do have,
Right.
there's something to look to. So, I think there's
But I mean, in theory, the Olympics,
argument.
as the Olympics, should be upholding those standards, right?
You would think, but they're also an organization that are going to uphold their own standards and their own rules because they're looking at it from a different lens. They're looking at it from spectators, from TV deals. They're looking at it from the politics that go on behind the scenes. And so they're not just, and I mentioned that in in the video that I was talking about, like when you get not just performers and break dancers and artists, or athletes, um, when they're in that competition and they're about their event, their sport, they're about their thing, that's what matters to them. All that external stuff, the publicity, the politics behind the scenes, no, it's showcasing your artistry and your athleticism, and that's what the beauty of it is. And so
But you're kind of saying that the Olympics is the equivalent of major labels getting involved with music.
it potentially could be, it could be, especially when you're dealing with something that's a culture.
Right. Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
I think there should be an effort to maintain the integrity of said culture and uphold
right.
standards that aren't simply their own standards based around viewership and sponsorship and those
Right.
types of attributes, but what actually is foundational to the culture.
Right. And so when you're dealing with culture, that's where other questions arise. Like people are like, well, we didn't see anybody from the Rocksteady crew. This is the first time it's in the Olympics. Why were there none even asked or
Are they
hosting
not aged out by
or
now? We still have young Rocksteady members.
I'm sorry?
I said, are they not aged out by now? When I think of Rocksteady, I'm thinking of Crazy Legs and these guys who are probably like 65 years old right now.
No, there's still there are young
I know, I'm
members
sure they still got
in
young
these
guys.
organizations.
It's
But
still,
why
I'm
wasn't
thinking
Crazy
of,
Legs asked?
you know,
Why wasn't he asked to be a judge? Why wasn't Crazy
Right.
Legs asked to be a judge or something in that regard?
Right.
And he said he wasn't asked. He said he probably would have turned it down if he
Yeah.
were, because this is not what he thinks it should be.
At least come
But
out and wave to the crowd, right? Give a speech.
something, something,
Put the
you know,
medal around the neck. Come on, give me something to work with here.
right. So that was what that kind of put some people off as well, that there was that disconnect, that this was just treated as an element to for the Olympics and not an honor. It didn't honor any of the culture in that regard. However,
However, you still got Homeboy Sandman played. You still got, let's be honest, breakdancing displayed
exactly,
worldwide level, right?
exactly.
So maybe it wasn't
And these
perfect.
breakers, these majority of them, these are people who have taken place in a lot of the community
Right. Yeah.
competitions that
Right.
had, so,
Right. Right. Well, again, let's not look at it through the lens of that one dancer that went viral.
right.
Let's look at it in its entirety. So the poll question of the week is: should breakdancing be included as a sport in future Olympic Games?
And let's make it clear that we did say it's not in the Olympics for was it 2028
Yeah.
in LA, but it is not because of the ray gun from Australia. I'm pretty sure this was decided even before it happened. So yeah, let's not say I've seen pieces saying, "Oh, she broke Olympics. She's the one that ruined it for everybody."
I
That's
mean,
not,
it could become the
it
reason why it's
could
not
be
brought back.
now, but that wasn't the reason.
Right. 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 I mean, maybe it was the reason for 28, but is it the reason for 32 and 36?
Well, they're pushing for 32. That same organization is pushing for 32, and I think it's going to be in Australia this time. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes. So
Yeah.
that's even
We'll
more
see.
reason to make this a positive experience than
Right.
a negative one.
So we have to wrap up shortly. I know we had a poll from last week, and you wanted to mention briefly the video on punching in, was it? Rappers punching in lyrics?
That was just more about it has the artistry changed, right?
Yeah.
That video was talking about that a lot of newer artists aren't sitting down to write their lyrics anymore. And they're just punching in, they'll stand in front of the mic and listen to the beat and then say a line that comes to their head, stop, and then kind of think about the next line and then punch in and do it like that instead of sitting down to do a coherent song. And there were even artists in the video that were saying, yeah, we don't do that no more.
We don't write anymore. I gotta say, in my experience, most people when I do get together with artists and they want to start a new song every week or whatever, but what they want to do usually is write on their phone now.
Right. Well, yeah, but they're still writing in that
Yes.
regard.
Yes.
Yeah.
There are people I know who punch in. It is a skill though. It's not something that everyone can do well. And we probably are more sensitive to it than other people would be because we're recording artists. We know what it sounds like when someone punches in. I don't
Right.
think most of the general listening public or even hip hop listeners can tell what's punched in and what isn't. And then there are some who do it so well that you really can't tell, right? So I try to do that if I am going to punch in. I mean, normally I record whole verses. And in fact, for the first time ever, when I was recording this latest project, I actually, on at least one occasion, recorded the entire song in the same take,
Right.
verse, hook, right, without stopping, which is something that I had never done before. So I do like doing that because I think, and again, maybe not everyone can tell, but I think to me it sounds more cohesive that way. There are
Right.
plenty of examples. I mean, I even pointed out on that Kendrick song, "Not Like Us," right? That
Right.
last line that everyone talks about, trying to strike a chord and it's probably A minor. That's a
Hmm.
clear punch in because it's just so choppy. He says the last line, and all of a sudden it just starts. It's like so it's there's no natural flow to it. And I personally don't really like that. I mean, I think it's not that it's disqualifying. I also listen to a song that has it, but it doesn't sound as good to me. It doesn't sound as natural to me. And to me, it's a step down in terms of the flow. But there are people, Big Pun was an example of someone who recorded that way. But I think more for breath control reasons, because he was obviously a heavyset man and had a hard time recording a whole verse, especially because he used to rap fast. So what he would do is he would rap a couple of lines and then punch in. But the way he would do it is he would record and then instead of just starting a whole new line, he would rap over the last few words of what he had just
Right.
done to go into the next one. And so that way there's more of a link between them. It sounds more natural, and most of the
Right.
time with him, for example, you wouldn't be able to tell he was punching in because it wasn't just start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. So it wasn't like, well, it's like herky jerky on top of itself. It was more flowing.
Hmm.
So I think that's the skill to it. I think that's, if you're going to do it, that's a way you can do it well. But maybe a lot of people are doing it like that now who are punching in and you just can't tell. But I also can hear when a lot of people are punching in because of how abrupt it sounds.
Right. So
Yeah.
yeah. All right. Well, let's get into the results of the poll real quick.
All right.
We did the poll last week, another Olympic focused topic. The question was, do you believe Algerian boxer Imane Khelif should have been banned from boxing women? Now, this was a very controversial point, and actually, Imane Khelif, since the Olympics is over, has now filed a suit. She's suing for the harassment that she received. And
She ended up winning the gold medal in boxing, right?
she won the gold medal.
Yeah.
And she's even named in her suit Elon Musk and I forget the other person that might
But you were
that's
going to say Jalen Carter for a second.
no.
Went after you.
Nah, I don't have anything. She can't take anything from me.
What you said on
But
Nuance last week, it was very
uh-uh.
hurtful. What you said on Nuance last week, it was
What
very
did I
hurtful.
say? I didn't say
You
anything
said
hurt.
maybe she shouldn't be boxing any division.
I was saying that that's one possibility to think about, that people that don't fit into the general boxes that we have set up, maybe they have to understand that maybe it's not for you to fit in, because these things only work when they have these generals, right? We have these certain things. So sometimes there may be situations where it's just like, oh, well, that's just not for you. That doesn't mean that
I get you.
she falls into that category, but it's another nuance to
There
look at. So
was a
anyway,
comment here. Uh, Wanted to look at. I know last week we went through a lot of these comments, but one just came in.
uh-oh.
And you know what? Oh, I guess because I have to sort this by most relevant or newest. Let's see if newest works. I got a lot of comments on this post. Yeah, here it is. This was an odd comment. Someone said, Matilda said, my point is, why doesn't she represent herself as a woman instead of wearing men's tracksuits?
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Women can't wear tracksuits? Like, what are you talking about?
She could wear jewelry, bikini, bathing suits, dresses, let her hair grow, wear makeup. Maybe I could get used to her being feminine. She is formed like a man, has no feminine nothing. I know she is married, not sure if she has any babies yet. Can't even find a picture of her in the bikini. That's
You
just a
want
weird
It's
thing
very
to
weird.
be judging someone's qualifications by.
You want her to be in the boxing ring in a bikini? Like, what do you want to
No, she
watch?
said she can't find a picture of her in a bikini. In
She's
other words, what she's saying is that she doesn't present with stereotypical feminine characteristics. But
Can you find a picture of like Kamala Harris in a bikini? Probably not.
right, right. See, it's funny. I actually took. We were going to mention this. We don't really have time, but briefly, I'll say I had to take a sexual harassment training as onboarding for this law firm I'm doing some work with. It's actually kind of funny. They make every lawyer who comes in do this harassment training, and some of it is just ridiculous that they make you have to take a class on what's appropriate, because if you don't know that that's appropriate, what are you doing in the workplace? Like, you got to go back to kindergarten, right? Some of it's like it should be very obvious, and it's kind of sad that even needs to be taught to people starting a job. But some
Right.
of it is useful to me in that it defines the parameters in today's world, in terms of certain type of harassment may not be what we historically thought of it to be, right? There may be other categories of it. For example, harassing someone on the basis of their gender expression. That's something
Right.
that would be new to these courses, right? Or,
Right.
certainly not when we were in school as kids, would they have taught us that. So
Right.
that maybe is useful to teach now. But this kind of reminded me, this comment that I read kind of reminded me of that. They were like, if you, for example, get on a coworker about not wearing enough makeup, or, she's a woman, but she doesn't wear her hair long enough. They said that could be considered a form of harassment. And they did put it under the category of sexual harassment, but they said really it's about gender expression, I think is how they,
Mm.
they, they called it.
Hmm.
But to me, it's just a matter of stereotype, right? I mean, just because someone is a woman doesn't mean they have to fit into all of the
No,
female stereotypes.
no, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And yeah, her having to wear a tracksuit or not to appeal to make you believe that she's a woman,
Yeah.
it's ridiculous, it's not necessary. So, so the results here of the poll, do you believe Algerian boxer Imane Khelif should have been banned from boxing? Women, 9% said yes, 91% said no. So pretty decisive, and we had hundreds of votes here. So pretty decisive response in this regard.
Yeah, it makes sense considering that all the reporting, like we said last week, is that she is a biological woman. So it isn't even a matter of gender identity.
Yeah,
It's her gender expression, her gender identity matches the biological sex. And so probably to these 91%, that's an open and shut case.
right. You're right. And, we made this, people brought up this argument before. It'd be similar to, first of all, genetically, she is a woman and or female, and people brought up Michael Phelps because naturally his torso is longer than most men, and his body produces less lactic acid than most people. So, there's a genetic advantage there. Should he be removed, or, we hail him as one of the greatest swimmers in Olympic history. So,
Yeah.
so
I do think, again, I made this point last week, the fact that it's boxing makes it more emotional for people. And maybe some are thinking about it less rationally because it
yeah.
involves people hitting each other. Let's face it.
Well, I think that definitely plays into it, and it's not even, I don't think it's less rational. I think when we talk about something and we're talking about violent sports or things where people can get physically hurt,
Mm-hmm.
there's going to be some more scrutiny. There has to be. Like we wouldn't put someone Shaq size, even if they're 12 years old, in a 12-year-old football league, because he could, let's face it, he could really hurt people.
Right. But Shaq boxing 12-year-olds, I think, would be looked at even with more scrutiny.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, dude, you're just too big.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sorry, this is not for you. You
Right.
are just too big. Even in the heavyweight division,
Yeah.
you are just too big.
But I say less rationally because we're not talking about school divisions. We are talking about the Olympics, which is supposed to be the best of the best, and which does include, as
Right.
you mentioned, oftentimes genetic freaks, so to speak, right? People who
Right.
just are built differently than
Right.
others, and that gives them an advantage in the sport, right?
Right.
So kind of
Or
part of the course at the
not even
Olympics. When it
genetic.
comes to boxing, I think people are
Yeah.
like, whoa, especially when it's easy then to put it in the framework of the culture wars, right? And say,
Right.
you see, these are US liberals at their dirty tricks again, as we
Right.
said,
Right. Right.
nothing to do with what's going on here. But
Right. It's
because
people
it
wanting to
is,
justify their
yeah,
ideas.
because it's boxing, it involves physical combat. I think it's
Right.
easier to draw that ire and emotion out of people.
Sure.
And yeah, I think a lot of people are thinking about it more emotionally than rationally, especially when you see some of these comments that we read. It seems like a lot of them are trying to find ways to justify their belief that
Right.
this boxer should not be eligible, right? Even
Right.
if it doesn't really make sense, even if it stretches logic.
Right. Yeah. So pretty decisive here, in terms of response. You know,
91-9, it's a blowout.
it's a blowout. It's definitely a blowout. Which, we're about to see how that plays out in court, because she's taking it to court. And interestingly enough, the Italian boxer that she boxed, that she quit, and then kind of sparked this whole controversy. She quit like 46 seconds in. She
Mhm.
said she had never been hit like that before. Um, she has since apologized to Imane Khelif for quitting. I didn't see the details on why.
Well,
Uh,
I didn't see that either, but I would say it seems like if she owes her an apology, it may be more for screaming out, this isn't fair, than for quitting. I
right.
think that sparked a lot of this, right? Her shouting out, this isn't fair, seemed to insinuate that this wasn't an appropriate match, right? Like that maybe she was fighting a born male or something.
Right. So she said that all this controversy makes me sad. I'm sorry for my opponent. If the ILC said she can fight, I respect that decision. It wasn't something I intended to do. Actually, I want to apologize to her and everyone else. I was angry because my Olympics had gone up in smoke. If I met her again, I would embrace her.
Yeah, you see, the lawyer in me makes me wonder if it was issued on advice of counsel,
Right, right,
especially considering we have ongoing litigation now. But all
right,
right,
right, right, right, right, right. So,
actually,
yeah,
next week maybe we'll get into this. I was watching on, on Roku, they let you watch news broadcasts from around the country, which is actually kind of interesting. And
right,
so the Florida news came on, and there's this case that actually showed, because in Florida you can see inside the courtrooms, they showed you opening statement in this trial of a woman who shot her neighbor through her door. She was saying
right.
that she thought that the neighbor was breaking into her house, and she shot the door and killed the neighbor. And I wanted to get into uh, my thoughts on what I saw on that trial, but we'll do that next week. But
Next week.
we'll do it next week because it just reminded me we had a discussion about litigation and lawyering up. It made me think of that.
All right. I think we've gone
Yeah.
way over time this time.
Yes.
We end up getting into conversations and looking at all these different aspects and it keeps going. So, do you want to drop a bottom line or did we
That is why
already?
it's called nuance, though, right? Because we're not tweeting over here. We're actually
Right.
having conversations, which I guess requires more than 240 characters to do.
Right.
So the bottom line, let's keep it short and sweet. Let's keep the bottom line to a tweet. Let's say the bottom line is look for the positive in a story, right? Don't always rush to the negative, even if you think the negative is going to give you more attention. Think about the toxic characteristics in that, right? And if there is good news, if there's something positive to say about something, let's hear that. I think there's an appetite for that too.
Sounds good. Excellent. And people can catch us on social media on YouTube at Nuance Show. Same with Instagram and everywhere podcasts are available.
All right. As always, thank you for tuning in. We've got work to do and bring Raucous back August 23rd. Take care.